Hi, my name is Mike, and I'm here to read a comic. And today's comic book is Superman's Girlfriend, Lois Lane, issue number 106, the infamous one, from November 1970. These comic books were still 15 cents at the time. We see the cover, the infamous, where Lois kind of goes in what would be then, fashionable clothing. She enters this device looking like Lois Lane we're used to, and she comes out looking a black woman. And, she narrates what's going to go on, saying that for the next 24 hours, that she has to live as a black woman and find out what was going on. This is clearly a product of its time. It was one of the rare quote unquote wall comics. And what I mean by wall comics is usually when you go into a comic book store, there'll be certain issues that are quote on the wall to highlight them. And you kind of get a sense of what was the hot titles at the time, or what are traditionally the important or key comic books, simply because those issues would get more in the back market. Market. Same way, I Am Curious Black. We will take a look and see exactly what's going on there. So anyway, we look at the splash page, and it's a setup. It's a little bit of a setup to what to expect, where Lois is challenging Superman, asking him, would he marry her if she were a black woman, as she is there, saying, do you see me, or do you see, my color, or something like that. Superman is seemingly pulling a dick move here by not answering the question. So he answers that question with another question. Excuse me. Tells me he doesn't really want to answer the question. In some fairness, he doesn't want to marry white Lois either. So that's why they always had this long going, is will they, won't they? But anyway, they're saying that this is not an imaginary tale. So they're saying this will have consequences. And it won't, because there were no consequences in the DC universe. An issue would start, and whatever happened rarely carried on to other comics. But anyway, Lois is giving this challenge to Superman. The script is by Robert Kagner. He was not a good person to choose from. He had strange ideas about African Americans at the time. He tried to create one of DC's first black superheroes, and he was called the Black Bomber. And what the conceit is that he's a white man who's a racist, but he develops the power almost like Shazam by saying black power, and he can turn into a black superhero. So that's sort of the transformation, like the Shazam transformation, but he would yell black power, and he'd become a black superhero, and he would save predominantly people in black communities. And then when he reverted back to his alter ego as the racist white guy, he would not remember that he was the Black Bomber, but he would read about the Black Bomber and get angry at him for saving black people. And so DC finally said, no, we can't run with that. So anyway, Robert Kagner, he did some good comics. The pencils are by Werner Roth. He was a well-known romance artist. When he worked with Marvel, he mostly did the X-Men. And he was not really a superhero artist, but I thought he did a pretty good job with what he was given his talent set wasn't suited for it. The inks are by Vince Colletta. Vince Colletta is kind of a very decisive figure in comics. He was a guy who inked very well, but he did it very quickly. And he was fine with sacrificing the artist's intent just to get a job finished. So he was criticized a lot for like erasing a lot of Jack Kirby's detail. But Vince's attitude was we needed to get the comic out. So and if a few little lines of pencil have to be erased, so be it. So anyway, going back to the story, Lois is talking about this assignment. She's going to write a story about Metropolis's quote Little Africa. That's like a neighborhood in Metropolis. I guess it was like their version of Harlem. Little Africa, as if Africa is not a continent, but just this one singular country. So immediately it falls off the bat there. Lois is off, in her white woman beauty. Benny, who's a regular taxi driver around town, recognizes Lois. This will work into the story later on. Lois is like, take me to Little Africa, where those people are. So anyway, Lois just simply gets off. She's all dolled up, like she's about to go into a fashion model suit. She tries to talk to some kids. The kids immediately turn their back to her. Lois is surprised. She's surprised that the privileged woman isn't getting her privilege. She's randomly going through quote-unquote slum tenements, knocking on the doors, and just getting her face slammed. And people are being just, in general, not friendly toward her. They're being really suspicious of her. And people are just, in general, just ignoring her. They're like, who is this woman? So anyway, they're kind of... Lois needs to take advantage of these people and write that story that will get her a Pulitzer, because apparently no other news agency has ever attempted to write about the black part of town. Lois is reduced to talking to a homeless woman, a homeless-looking woman in the park, and she knows she's blind, and the blind woman moves when she hears Lois is speaking, because she could tell that this is not a black woman. So they all leave. And and Lois is just like, dumbfounded. She's like, she's never going to be able to get her Pulitzer Prize for writing about Little Africa. Then there's this kind of activist here who's speaking to this crowd, and pointing out to Lois, saying that never forget she's whitey, and talking about the injustices that a lot of African Americans, saying that you'll only let us do these things for you, and we're here to serve you, and you're oppressing us, and you don't want us near us, and stuff like that. And Lois is crying, she's like, oh, I'm not like that. I really am not like that. So anyway, it's all about Lois's feelings. So anyway, Superman shows up. And obviously what Clark Kent knows, Superman knows they're the same person. He mentions, Clark told me about this assignment of yours. I want to make sure that they haven't raped you or something like that. Lois is on the park bench. She's saying, I'll never get these people to trust me. They're just so mean. Why are they so mean to us? So anyway, Superman takes her to the Fortress of Solitude. Lois doesn't understand why he's taking her there. It turns out that Superman has a device where he can basically change her appearance for 24 hours. Apparently this was a device used in a previous comic. And it basically transforms Lois into a black woman. And obviously this is based off a famous book, I think it was by Howard Griffin, called Black Like Me. Howard Griffin was a white reporter, and what he did was he underwent special medical treatment and special tanning to change his skin tone, so that he could pass as a black man. So he was a white man passing as a black man, and he wrote about his experiences as he was perceived as being a black man, and kind of, hey, if you were treated like this is how it is. And it's clearly the inspiration for this story. Lois comes out, she's a beautiful black woman, by the way. And Superman says, listen, you'll only be black. You'll only be this way for a day. Don't worry. It will reverse itself. The other people, they don't have this option, but you do. So Lois changes her clothing, which is fine. There's no problem with a black woman wearing this clothing. But she adorns more traditional, African traditional garb. And she still looks great in it. She sees Benny, the taxi driver. Benny drives right by her. And this is unusual because he always stops for Lois. But, as she's black, because he sees a black person, he says, I don't want to be bothered with this person. He picks up a white person who is a few feet away from Lois.
Taxi! Taxi!
So Lois is kind of understanding some of the service problems. Lois is on the subway. She's mentioning the amount of staring she's getting. This is something I have heard from African Americans. Actually, a lot of African American women who tourists who go on vacations abroad. They'll go to countries like Italy or Asian countries, and they'll talk about how they will often be stared at by people. And Lois is a pretty good-looking black chick, but yeah, if she probably knows the difference between when a guy is creeping on her and when a guy's like staring at her like an exhibit.
I'm sorry, but also not sorry, because I will never accept this as an excuse. It's 2024, the internet exists, TV exists, and black people are a major part of popular culture. So at this point, it's like, what are you even curious about? Because anything you can see by staring at me, you can also see by staring at a TV screen. And maybe some of y'all don't understand because you've never actually been treated as if your body is different to others. But growing up as a black person, people have actually asked to feel my skin as if it's going to feel different to theirs. They've asked me questions like, does your hair grow? They ask like a bunch of ridiculous things like, can you tan? Like, black people are seen as objects, like we're less than human, like our bodies don't function the same way as yours. I am not a science project.
And Lois is saying, hey, I haven't changed except for my skin tone. So Lois gets off at the subway station where Little Africa is. And she's thinking about her life and how much privileged it was, and she didn't really realize it. And it turns out Lois enters a building looking to interview someone. This was actually not uncommon that reporters would do something like this, at least back then. I think email probably changed that. So anyway, Lois is entering this tenement. She notices that there's a fire. She puts the fire out. One of the tenants notices this and thanks her for doing it. And she says, listen, this has been a problem for a long time. We tried to explain it to the landlord. Landlord doesn't do shit. And he says it's on us, and we have to deal with these fires. The woman lets Lois into her home. She's a young mother. She's just talking about how things are difficult for them, and some of the problems with the apartment. Some plaster comes down. It gets into Lois's coffee. She's like horrified. She's not used to this. The woman has children, and there are rats in the apartment. She's trying to kill a rat with a broom here. She loves and emphasizes that she loves her child, And the kind of this imagery was needed. You had to normalize this, that hugging a child isn't unique to like one type of people. Lois is very moved by this. She's crying she's crying fears, looking very beautiful. And then she comes across a kind of like an activist school lesson here. I remember sometimes seeing these, and there's an active there kind of educating a group of kids, and they're talking about race, saying, black is beautiful, and you need to say that loud, and you need to say that clear.
I am black and I am beautiful.
James.
I am black and I am beautiful.
Malcolm.
I am black and I am beautiful.
Louise.
I am black and I am beautiful.
Mr. Enders. You see, ladies and gentlemen, some people can't learn what we learn.
It's kind of like the famous Malcolm X scene with the kids at the end. Anyway, the angry activist that Lois saw when she was a white person, she sees again, and this guy's good-looking guy, kind of like putting the moves on her. He kind of vaguely recognizes Lois. He sees some of Lois, but he's not quite sure where. Lois is not saying anything. However, he notices that there's some dropouts, and they're going into an alley, and that constitutes enough for this guy to interfere with their business. Holy crap! This guy's pretty intrusive. Lois says, "I need to check this out." So it turns out there's like a mob deal going on. You have like the 30s looking gangsters with the kind of like the young African Americans. It turns out, there's a drug deal, and this guy, he's upset, saying your drugs are like killing our community. The gangsters, both black and white, they open fire on this guy. So anyway, it turns out he's shot. Lois isn't. Superman comes around, and then he kind of disarms the gangsters, and he knocks them out. The activist is shot. Lois is concerned about him. Superman flies both of them to the hospital. It looks like the guy's dying, and they need a particular type of blood type. Apparently, it's a very rare blood type, but it just so happens. Superman offers to donate his blood. He's a totally different race or species. It might not work that way, but he's saying, hey, you couldn't penetrate my skin anyway. Lois has the type of blood this guy's looking for. So she's kind of a little apprehensive, but she's going to offer to donate it. She's concerned about him making it through, but then as the blood transfer is going, he's getting more blood. He wakes up. So the blood transfer worked. The blood that he needed to survive, he got. Superman and Lois, there was a black woman. They're talking, and she's giving a what if I can't turn back into a white woman, would you still marry me as a black woman, knowing that you'd be socially ostracized? And Superman pulls out the alien card. Now this guy has been treated as a privileged white man his entire life, because he looks like a privileged, entitled white man his entire life. But he's saying, hey, you know what, I'm an alien, and I don't know what his point is exactly, but you notice he's not giving a direct answer. And Lois points out that, but you happen to fit in with the dominant culture. And then he starts changing the subject. But what about my enemies and blah blah blah. Lois is saying, "Listen, I've heard that before." They might be trying to separate romantic scheming Lois from news crusader Lois. So this might be a slight pivot, saying, "Hey, we're gonna." I think they focus more on quote social relevance. But some of these issues are fun to read. This is a fun issue to read. I also like the art. What's happening? Lois is undergoing a transformation. So she's white Lois, right here. So Lois is back to being a white woman, but when she was saving that young black activist, she was still black Lois, and he saw her as black Lois. The nurse is saying, "Hey, the patient wants to see who made the blood donation." Lois said it was me. And she doesn't know how she should approach him. Because he says this, "He called me Whitey, his enemy. What will he say now?" Now that he'll see her as a white woman. Like, this black man might be rude to me. And Superman's saying, "Hey, that's a chance you'll have to take, but it's worth it, and you saved a life." Same way, there's no pictures here. It says the black man accepts that a white woman saved his life, and the black man ever being magnanimous, and just appreciates his white savior so much. And I guess the takeaway is black people, don't be mean to white people. I think that's one of the big problems people have with this issue. I'm not sure I want to read the rest of it. There's basically kind of like a filler world history, kind of like a history lesson. The other one is a comic called Rose and the Thorn. I never really had much interest in them. I don't think anyone did, because when you go through the letters page, rarely people talked about it, and they said, "Get rid of this." See an ad for some upcoming DC comics. They were selling these at 20 cents. I think Marvel was selling at 20 cents, and they were outselling DC, because that 5 cents, it mattered back then. Yeah, Rose and the Thorn. I'm not interested in it. Here we see the last page. I didn't see a letters page for this comic. That's unusual. It's direct currents. It's just letting you know the upcoming comic books that are coming on the newsstand. Let's see. Son of Tomahawk. Yeah, I wouldn't have read that. Wonder Woman. I was only a middling reader of Wonder Woman. Aquaman. I don't think I would have been reading Aquaman, even though I think they had some good stories. The Flash. Yeah, I read The Flash regularly. Batman. I read Batman regularly, mentioning that Neil Adams contributed to a House of Mystery story. I'll get some more sales. Talking about the War comic. And Jerry Lewis, which oddly enough, they had a long-running comic with Jerry Lewis. And The World's Finest. This is a team up with the Flash and Batman and Superman. Yeah. I definitely remember the Marvel stuff more than DC. So anyway, this is my review of Superman's Girlfriend, Lois Lane, issue 106 from November 1970. And I hope to have more reviews up soon. Bye.